I found out my mother was dying on a Tuesday morning in October. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctor said she had maybe 6 months, but she'd likely be gone before spring. Mom sat perfectly still in the hospital chair, hands folded in her lap like she was waiting for a bus. The only sign that she'd heard the news at all was the slight tremble in her fingers as she reached for her purse to check the time. "We should get going," she whispered. "I need to start dinner for your father. Your grandmother will be upset if it's late again." That's when I knew I couldn't let her go like this. Not after 40 years of bending to my father's family, of folding herself smaller and smaller until she nearly disappeared. Not after decades of my grandmother's cutting remarks and my grandfather's cold dismissal. Not after watching my father stand by in silence year after year. Mom had given up her career, her friends, her identity to become what they wanted. And now she was going to die with all of that unspoken weight crushing her chest along with the cancer. I couldn't let that be her final chapter. "No," I said, taking her hand. "We are going to do something different this time. My name is Sarah Harlow, and this is the story of my mother's last Christmas and the gift of truth we gave to a family that never deserved her." I moved back into my childhood home the following week. My apartment lease in Chicago was ending anyway, and I could work remotely. At least that's what I told Mom. Dad raised his eyebrows but didn't object. He never did when something made his life easier. And having me there to take care of Mom meant he could continue his regular golf games and evening card sessions at his parents' house 3 streets over. "You shouldn't have to put your life on hold," Mom said as I unpacked in my old bedroom. The walls were still the pale blue I'd chosen when I was 14. "I can manage. I'm 32 and divorced," I replied. "My life's been on hold for a while now. This is where I need to be." What I didn't tell her was that I had a plan. It had come to me the night after her diagnosis, lying awake in my apartment, tears soaking my pillow. It wasn't just about confrontation, though there would be plenty of that. It was about giving my mother something she'd never had in this family, a voice. I started small. The next afternoon, when Grandma Helen called to say she was bringing over a casserole because Emily probably isn't up to cooking, I answered the door instead of Mom. "That's so kind," I said, not taking the dish. "But Mom's already planned dinner. She's feeling great today." "Well, she needs to rest," Grandma insisted, trying to push past me. I stood my ground. "And she will. On her terms." The shock on her face was worth the argument that followed. For 40 years, no one had denied Helen Harlow anything in this house. When Dad came home and heard what happened, his face flushed red. "Your grandmother was just trying to help. By implying Mom can't take care of her family? That's not help, Dad. That's control. You don't understand how things work in this family," he said, lowering his voice so Mom wouldn't hear from the kitchen. I leaned closer. "I understand perfectly. That's the problem." Over the next few weeks, I began documenting everything. I started a journal, recording every interaction, every subtle dig, every instance where Mom's wishes were ignored. I installed a recording app on my phone and began capturing conversations, the way Grandma Helen would comment on Mom's appearance or housekeeping, how Grandpa Robert would talk about her as if she weren't in the room, how my father would defer to his parents over his wife. It wasn't difficult. They'd grown so comfortable in their cruelty that they didn't bother to hide it, even with me watching. I also began gathering evidence of the financial abuse. Mom had worked as an accountant before marrying Dad, but she'd given it up when his parents insisted a Harlow wife didn't need to work. What I discovered in the old boxes in the attic made my blood boil. Mom had inherited a significant sum when her parents died, money that had mysteriously been transferred into accounts only Dad could access. Accounts that were now nearly empty. When I confronted Mom about it, she just shook her head. "It doesn't matter anymore, Sarah." "It matters to me," I said, holding up the bank statements. "They took everything from you." She looked out the window toward the large house where my grandparents lived. "Not everything. They never took you." As November passed and Mom grew weaker, I continued my research. I interviewed old friends she'd lost touch with, colleagues who remembered her brilliance, neighbors who'd witnessed the gradual erosion of her spirit. I compiled photographs, letters, financial records. I was building a case, though I wasn't sure exactly what form my plan would take until Mom mentioned Christmas. "I want to host Christmas this year," she said one evening as I helped her into bed. The chemo had taken her hair and much of her strength, but her eyes still held that gentle determination I remembered from my childhood. "Are you sure?" "It's a lot of work," I said, tucking the blanket around her thin shoulders. "It will be my last one," she replied simply. "And I want it to be on my terms." That night, I finalized my plan. Christmas dinner would be our stage, and every member of the Harlow family would be in attendance. It would be a gift none of them would forget. The preparations took on a feverish quality. Mom insisted on doing what she could, planning the menu, choosing the decorations. I handled everything else, including sending out the invitations with a specific note that we were planning something special to honor the family history. "They'll all come," Mom said with certainty. "Your grandparents would never pass up an opportunity to be at the center of attention." She was right. Every invitation was accepted, including those to Dad's brothers and their wives, all cut from the same entitled cloth as my grandparents. The house would be full, 17 Harlows in total, most of whom had participated in or witnessed my mother's systematic diminishment over the years. As Christmas approached, I worried that Mom might not be strong enough, but the project seemed to energize her. There were days when the pain was too much, when she couldn't get out of bed, but even then, she would call me over to discuss some detail of our plan. "You're enjoying this," I observed one afternoon. A smile touched her lips. "I've imagined standing up to them for 40 years. I never had the courage. But now there's nothing to lose," I finished for her. "No," she corrected me. "Now there's something to gain. My dignity." Christmas Day arrived with a fresh blanket of snow. Mom was up early, dressed in a new red sweater that hid how thin she'd become. I helped her apply makeup to bring some color to her pale cheeks. For a moment, I saw the vibrant woman she must have been before the Harlows broke her down. "You look beautiful," I told her. "I feel powerful," she replied. The family arrived in waves, first my grandparents, Helen examining every corner of the house for flaws, Robert heading straight for the liquor cabinet. Dad's brothers and their families followed, the house filling with forced cheer and undercurrents of judgment. Dinner was scheduled for 3 o'clock. At 2:30, I helped Mom to her seat at the head of the table, a position Grandma Helen usually claimed, but which we had deliberately set with Mom's place card. I placed a wrapped box beside her plate and gave her hand a squeeze. "Are you ready?" I whispered. She nodded. "I've been ready for 40 years. When everyone was seated and the tension over the seating arrangement had somewhat subsided, Mom tapped her glass with a spoon. The table fell silent. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "As you know, this will be my last Christmas with this family." Murmurs of performative sympathy rippled around the table. Aunt Judith dabbed at dry eyes with her napkin. "Before we eat, I want to share a special gift with all of you," Mom continued, placing her hand on the wrapped box. "Sarah has helped me put together something I think will be meaningful." I stood up and retrieved the laptop and portable projector I'd hidden in the living room. While I set it up, Mom continued. "For 40 years, I've been part of this family. For 40 years, I've tried to be what you wanted me to be. I gave up my career, my independence, my voice. I allowed myself to be criticized, controlled, and dismissed because I thought that's what it meant to be a good wife and mother." The room had gone deathly quiet. Dad stared at his plate. Grandma Helen's mouth was a tight line of disapproval. But now that my time is limited, I find I can no longer remain silent. Today, I'm giving you the gift of truth and giving myself the gift of finally being heard. I dimmed the lights and started the presentation. On the dining room wall appeared a slideshow titled The Education of Emily Harlow. It began with photos of Mom in college, vibrant and smiling, newspaper clippings about her academic achievements, letters of commendation from her first accounting job. "This is who I was," Mom narrated as the images changed. "Before I met Thomas and became a Harlow." The next section showed our family photos chronologically. You could see the light in Mom's eyes dimming with each passing year, her posture becoming more hunched, her smile more forced. Interspersed were audio recordings I'd made over the past weeks, Grandma Helen criticizing Mom's cooking, Grandpa Robert dismissing her opinions, Dad contradicting her in front of his parents. I'd also included older recordings from family videos where similar patterns were evident. "For decades, this has been my daily experience," Mom said as the family shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Then came the financial records, bank statements showing the transfer of Mom's inheritance, documents bearing forged signatures, evidence of how Grandpa Robert had pressured Dad to put all assets in his name alone. "You didn't just take my identity," Mom continued, her voice unwavering. "You took my financial security, my safety net." Grandpa Robert stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. Thomas, control your wife." "Sit down, Dad," my father said quietly, his eyes fixed on the presentation. It was the first time I'd ever heard him contradict his father. The final section of the slideshow featured interviews I'd conducted, Mom's old friends describing how she'd been systematically isolated from them, neighbors recounting instances of public humiliation, even our family doctor confirming the stress-related health issues Mom had experienced over the years. When the presentation ended, the room remained dark for a moment before I turned the lights back on. Mom's face was wet with tears, but she sat straight-backed and calm. "I'm not showing you this to hurt you, though God knows you've hurt me," she said. "I'm showing you this because I forgive you, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or continuing to enable abuse." She opened the box beside her plate and removed 17 envelopes, each bearing a name. She handed them to me, and I distributed them around the table. "These are my individual letters to each of you. They contain specific memories, things I've never had the courage to say. Some include apologies for times I should have stood up for myself or for Sarah. Others include boundaries I should have set long ago." Grandma Helen refused to take her envelope. "This is inappropriate, Emily. If you're unhappy, there are private ways to address it." "Privacy is what allowed this to continue for 40 years, I interjected. "We are done with privacy." Mom smiled at me gratefully before continuing. "In my last months, I will be living by a new set of rules. I will speak my mind. I will make my own choices. I will spend time with people who value me. If you can respect that, you're welcome in my life. If not, this will be our goodbye." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, to everyone's surprise, my father stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "I'll respect that," he said, his voice cracking. He looked older suddenly, diminished. "And I owe you an apology, Emily. A lifetime of apologies." One by one, family members opened their envelopes. Some read in silence, others with growing discomfort. My uncles looked embarrassed, my aunts defensive. My cousins, who had grown up watching their parents and grandparents treat my mother poorly, seemed confused, as if seeing their family dynamic clearly for the first time. Grandpa Robert crumpled his letter without reading it. "I won't sit here and be accused in my own family." "It's not your family, Robert," Mom said calmly. "It's ours. And this isn't your house. It's mine." "We are leaving," Grandma Helen announced, standing up. "Thomas, are you coming?" My father looked at her, then at Mom, then at me. I could see 40 years of conditioning warring with the undeniable evidence of what they'd done. "No," he said finally. "My place is here." After my grandparents left, taking my most rigid uncle and his family with them, an extraordinary thing happened. The remaining family members began to talk, really talk. My Aunt Rebecca admitted through tears that she'd seen what was happening but had been too afraid of her mother-in-law to intervene. My cousins asked questions about the woman their Aunt Emily had been before, the one in those early photos. We eventually ate dinner, though not the formal meal we'd planned. Instead, we gathered in the kitchen, making sandwiches and telling stories. Mom laughed more that evening than I'd heard in years. Before they left, each remaining family member hugged Mom and whispered something in her ear. I don't know what they said, but I saw the peace it brought her. That night, as I helped her into bed, she took my hand. "Thank you for giving me my voice back. You always had it," I told her. "You just needed someone to listen." Mom lived 4 more months. They were difficult months physically, as the cancer progressed, but they were the freest months of her adult life. My father, to his credit, tried to make amends. He couldn't undo 40 years of weakness, but he stood by her until the end, finally putting her needs before his parents. My grandparents never spoke to us again. They sent a floral arrangement to the funeral but didn't attend. By then, it didn't matter. Mom had said her piece, and in doing so, had liberated not just herself but others in the family who had been silenced. The last thing Mom said to me the day before she died was, "Promise me you won't wait until you're dying to use your voice." I haven't. And every Christmas, I tell her story, our story, as a reminder that it's never too late to reclaim your power, to demand respect, to break the chains that bind you to toxic people, even when those people are family. If you're watching this and something in my mother's story resonates with you, don't wait for a terminal diagnosis to make a change. Stand up now. Speak your truth now. Set your boundaries now. Because the gift of authenticity is one you deserve to give yourself while you have plenty of time to enjoy it. Thank you for watching my story. If you want to see more powerful stories of family justice, subscribe to Revenge Chronicles. Remember that setting boundaries isn't revenge, it's self-respect. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from those who don't value you, even when they share your blood. In memory of Emily Harlow, who found her voice just in time.